Welcome to the Fit Strong Women Over 50 podcast, episode number 81. Hi, I'm Chris. Welcome to the podcast and to the Becoming Ellie community.
And I'm Jill. Chris and I decided to create the Becoming Ellie community after we noticed that the numbers of women at the gym and at races were dwindling when it got into the 50 and over category.
Yes, many women over 50 know that they want to stay healthy, be fit, and have an active lifestyle. But sometimes it feels like you're alone in your journey. So we wanted to create a community.
And then I know you might be wondering why we named the community Becoming Ellie. As the legend goes, Ellie is the Norse goddess of aging who beat Thor in a wrestling match. Yeah. Every time I say it, I laugh.
Yeah, it's funny. When she was challenged to the wrestling match, no one expected her to do well, much less win. So we decided to name our community after her because we all want to be fit and strong as we age.
Before we go to our interview, I want to give a shout out to those of you who have joined our Becoming Ellie Facebook group. We're so happy that you found us and jumped right in.
Yes, and be sure to go to the Becoming Ellie website and sign up for our newsletter. It's the best way to be informed about the podcast and our blog. That's becomingellie.com, and Ellie is spelled E-L-L-I.
I'm really excited about our podcast guest today. Talking to her reminds me how important it is to keep working on being fit and strong.
And we do want to remind everyone that we aren't doctors or dietitians, so do not take medical advice from us. Consult with your own medical experts for your care.
Yes, good advice. Let's go to the podcast. Dr. Kylie Burton is a doctor of chiropractic care and a certified functional medicine practitioner. Kylie is an expert in functional medicine and helps thousands of individuals with seemingly impossible health struggles find answers, healing, and hope, even if they've been told their labs are normal.
Besides helping patients, she also teaches practitioners of all backgrounds how they can level up their patient results by using her techniques. Once on stage, she now offers a weekly live series on Facebook.
As a guest on dozens of podcasts, she also hosts the podcast Beyond the Diagnosis with Dr. Kylie and has been featured on the Sheila Mac Show on KCAA radio. And on TV, she has been a guest on Good Morning Utah and Fox 26 Houston. Welcome, Dr. Kylie. It's great to have you join us.
Thanks, ladies. I'm excited to join you guys, talk all about menopause, chronic fatigue, all these lovely issues that women have to deal with.
Oh, yeah. Great.
Well, we're really excited to get a chance to talk to you. And maybe we can get started. Can you talk a little bit about functional medicine and how that's different from more traditional medicine?
Yeah, so functional medicine is all about finding the why. The what's causing this, the why behind everything. And I always tell people, I could care less whether you have a diagnosis or you don't. Because really a diagnosis just tells me what symptoms, what umbrella your symptoms fall under. Whereas for me, I'm just, yes, your body's producing these symptoms, they're portraying these symptoms. Why? Giving you a diagnosis like chronic fatigue syndrome, well, you already know you're tired. I already know you're tired. So giving you that diagnosis isn't going to help anything. Whereas I want to say, what's causing the chronic fatigue? What's causing your body to feel like it's betrayed you? What's causing hot flashes? What's causing low libido? What's causing all this fun stuff that we have to deal with? And that's my approach to functional medicine, is really digging into the why. And a lot of times it takes time on my part, but the results are pretty cool.
That's awesome.
So I gathered then that your focus with your patients is to both improve their health and also prevent disease of various kinds.
Yeah, my ideal patient is someone who's been tossed from doctor to doctor to doctor to specialist to specialist. They've even tried many naturopaths or alternative medicine type ideas or concepts, and they haven't gotten anywhere. So it literally is, I am their last resort. And then I pull their medical records and we see what their labs really say. And it's like, whoa, when you take the normal lab range and you condense it into a functional lab range, now it's like you get the answers, even though you have the blood work in your hands, you've been told they're normal, and yet they might be normal, but they're not ideal. So helping people heal. And then, of course, if they're active enough and proactive enough to prevent all the ugly diseases. Like, for example, my grandma died at 82 a couple of years ago. And the last 5, 6, 7 years of her life, they were really hard on her body to the point where every time she moved, she'd fracture a vertebrae.
Oh, my gosh.
Because her osteoporosis was so bad. And I've got all my family members saying, hey, Kylie, you got to do something. And really, at that point, my hands are tied behind my back. What I needed to do was get a hold of her 30 years ago.
Right.
And do all the preventive stuff. So right now, when you're 50s, early 60s, like, it's the perfect time to take action to prevent all the ugly stuff down the road that we just think is normal with age, whether it's osteoporosis or Alzheimer's or diabetes or whatever it may be. We can take the actions necessary to not only make our life better now, but make it better 10 years from now as well.
That's great. I know my mother, for the last, 10 years of her life, said, I'm just so tired. And she saw all these different doctors, and everyone just basically said, well, you're old.
Yeah.
You're old.
You're not a spring chicken. Man, they've told my mom that so many times. I'm sick of hearing it.
You're not even the one being told. It's your mom.
No. Well, I am so interested in what you have to say because, I'm 26 years younger than she is. And if there's something I can do to avoid some of the struggles that she's had, I would love to do that, especially if it has to do with eating right. I think I know what's right, but talking to someone like you, that whole, your lab tests are normal. And you touched on that just a minute ago. You said they might be normal, but they're not ideal. If they're normal, shouldn't you feel okay? And how can we improve our health if they're normal, but our lab results, aren't proving out how we're feeling?
Yeah. So let's think about these normal lab concept, right? And I always tell people, it's not your doctor's fault. Your doctor is doing the best that they can. They just have a very limited toolkit. And inside their toolkit are medications, really, because that's what med school teaches them to do. And when they're taught to look at labs, even I was taught this way. I've had to learn everything outside of school that I basically do now. So they look at labs in this normal lab range. We want normal labs. If they're not normal, then we have something like liver disease, kidney disease, heart failure, some type of disease, some type of diagnosis that they can place next to our name and give us a pill to manage our symptoms for the rest of our life. Like, for example, rheumatoid arthritis and any other autoimmune diseases like that, like Sjogren's and Crohn's, and list goes on and on. And MS, Parkinson's, even Alzheimer's can get into that autoimmune series. But if we're looking at any types of those diagnoses, they say, okay, you need to take Humira for the rest of your life. I've had a 25-year-old male that I've worked with. He got diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, and they told him he had to take Humira, an injection, once a week for the rest of his life. And he's like, no, that's not okay with me. There's got to be a better way. So it's the same thing with any age. We want the normal labs because that tells us that we don't have a disease. We don't have a diagnosis. But that doesn't mean that we feel good. A lot of people, especially when you have normal labs and you're just like, something is not right. I just don't feel like myself. Whether it's the fatigue or whether it's the menopause or whether it's just like I'm experiencing bad days and I have good days. And sometimes, I feel great. And sometimes I'm just bedridden and I have no idea why. We take those normal lab concepts and we condense it into a smaller lab range. And then we can say, okay, if we fall outside of this range, now we don't feel good, but we're not sick enough yet to have a disease. Does that make sense?
Sure does.
That's how you become like pre-something.
Yeah. It's like pre-diabetes with A1C at 6 versus 6.5 when you're diabetic. It's that concept of, I'm going to take that lab range and then I'm going to condense it. And for example, the thyroid lab range is by far the easiest to do this with. So a lot of people will get their TSH marker for a thyroid lab test, and that TSH is between 0.5 and 5.5. That's like the standard normal lab range for that TSH. Now, trying to find your ideal TSH where you have the energy, your hair's thick and healthy, your brain's working great instead of having brain fog, all of these things that we associate with the thyroid, and yet we keep getting told that our TSH is normal, yet we have all the symptoms, right? So if we were to pinpoint exactly what number each individual's TSH should be when they feel good, it's going to be really hard with that 0.5 to 5.5 range. It's like trying to find your favorite restaurant somewhere between California and New York. Good luck, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if I can say, I'm in Utah. I don't know where you ladies are. Where are you guys at?
We're in Ohio.
So if I can say, I need to find your ideal TSH somewhere in Utah or somewhere in Ohio or somewhere in Georgia, that's going to narrow it down much more than California to New York, right?
Right.
And then I can say, all right, if my TSH is now between 1.8 and 3, that's a much tighter range. That's where I'm going to feel good. I'm going to have the energy. My brain's going to be functioning. My kids aren't going to get away with things because mom forgot. Or, energy is a big one. Hair growth, hair thickness. But that's the concept of taking a TSH lab range and saying, I'm normal, but yet I'm not ideal. Hence why I have all the symptoms.
Do you run into the other side of this where someone comes to you and says their labs are not normal, but they don't want to take the medication or they're questioning the results?
Yes, for sure. And I've had everything under the spectrum. One of my favorite patients, she was like 65, almost 65, and she'd been on thyroid medication for 2 decades at this point. And she was so terrified to get off of it because she tried getting off of it at some point before, but yet she still has all of the thyroid symptoms. She's just taking this because, her doctor told her to take it. And once we got into the underlying factors of it all with multiple labs, now she's, going to drag race. What? I can't even remember. Some type of dirt racing that her husband loved to do. They would travel all over the country. And she got to the point where she was either having to choose whether she continues to travel with him or she doesn't. Because every time she'd get to the racetrack with all of the fumes and everything in the air, it would just shut her body down. So she'd spend the whole time in the trailer anyways, just trying to function. So we were able to clear out all that stuff. And now she's, 65 off traveling the country with her husband, well, minus last year. But
yeah, last year was an anomaly anyway.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I see it all. I see the 27-year-old who has a crazy, crazy high liver markers. And the doctor just says, well, it's because you're on multiple medications. Your liver has to deal with it. She's 27 years old. What is she going to do when she's 55?
Right.
The same thing? Or if you're 55, what are you going to do when you're 75?
Yeah.
Labs are really cool. I love labs because numbers never lie. And we could get into what your labs say with chronic fatigue if you guys are interested.
Yeah,
that actually leads right into the next question that I
go
had
for
for
it.
you, because our audience is primarily women over 50. And sometimes I hear people say, oh, I'm so tired. I'm more than I used to. It must be my age. And I don't know, is it really their age, or how do you know if it's your age or not? Maybe you could talk a little bit about hidden causes of chronic fatigue and that type of thing.
Okay, perfect. I hate that age excuse.
I do too, because I'm only getting older.
Yeah. And I always hate when people just say, I'm surviving. Do you really just want to survive?
No.
Or do you want to actually enjoy life?
Right.
And so many people, whether you're 15 or 30 or 60, they're always hitting, they can be at some point of a survival mode. And they've been to every doctor. They've been told, it's because you're a mom. It's because you're a grandma. It's because, you're getting old. And I hate all those excuses. In fact, I have an episode literally called It's Not Because You're a Mom. And it goes into this factor, these 3 chronic fatigue underlying causes that I'm going to teach you guys right now. So if you're listening, ladies, no matter how old you are, grab your labs. Whatever labs you have, your last blood work your doctor took on you, whether it's on your phone or on a computer or just the printed out copies of it. Or if you need to get them, go ask your doctor for them or call them and they'll send them to you. So grab your labs, because we all have this marker. And this is the number one underlying cause of chronic fatigue that I see. And I see everybody from Western medicine to alternative medicine to, they've tried it all. And then and I pull their labs, I'm like, oh, well, look, this is what, it's right here. You just didn't have the right person reading them. So I'm going to tell you guys, the CBC with differential is by far the most valuable lab you could ever have in your possession. Now, the nice thing is that CBC with differential is the number one lab test doctors take as just a standard. Let's figure out and make sure nothing's going on wrong with just this lab test. So it's called a CBC with differential. Guarantee you all have them. And the nice thing is, hey, insurance pays for it most of the time. So the very top marker on this lab report is known as white blood cell count, WBC. That WBC is probably normal. You want it to be normal, but it's probably not ideal, especially if you're dealing with any type of chronic fatigue. Or if you're just saying, I just don't feel like myself. And nobody can really tell me what's going on. But I know that something's not right and I just don't feel like myself. So that white blood cell count, WBC, if it is less than 5 or greater than 8, now we're dealing with an hidden low-grade infection. But it's not active enough to produce a positive test result.
To set off the alarm.
Yeah. But it's still low-grade. It's still there that your body's fighting it to the point where research has said, type 1 diabetes, it's a low-grade virus that attacks the pancreas. That's what the onset is of type 1 diabetes. And the more I work with autoimmune, which I do a lot, autoimmune, I would say 90% of them, when I pull everybody's records, I can find and I can trace back years and years and years of these low-grade hidden infections that always have gone past because they're not active enough. And so let's use Epstein-Barr virus, for example. The mono virus. If anybody's ever been diagnosed with mono or Epstein-Barr virus, you know that when that test is positive, you are so tired, you can't even walk up the stairs.
Right.
Like that's how exhausted you are. I just got records of a 17-year-old who he'll wake up, have a great night of sleep, and then he can go to his first class of school, literally is falling asleep in the chair at school. And he's got this positive Epstein-Barr virus. So that's to the point where you're getting it at. But to get that positive test, it's got to be pretty active. However, most people, it's still like a low grade. So our body's still fighting it. It's still causing some fatigue, but yet not enough to be a positive test. So that's what I'm talking about here. If you're looking at your white blood cell count and you're saying, okay, it's 4.2 this day, and then another day it's 9.8. Don't go running to your doctor and telling them that you have an infection because they're going to laugh at you. Just know that for yourself, there's this low grade something going on inside your body. And if you can clear it out, now it's like, okay, my brain's back. I can lose the weight. I can have the energy to be the grandma I want to be with my grandkids. And I can be like myself again, post-menopause or wherever the stage is. But underlying is this huge infection factor that goes missed so many times. Now, the white blood cell count will tell you that you have an infection, but then you have to get down into the lower lab markers to figure out what type, whether it's a viral, bacterial, parasitic, fungal, and oftentimes it's a combination.
Oh, no wonder it's hard to figure out.
Yeah. This is why I teach doctors how to do this stuff. So the numbers get a little bit dicey there. So just know you're not going crazy. It's not you. It's not because you're tired. You're getting old. You're a grandma. It's literally that your body is constantly under duress. It's fighting. And then you just got to clear it out. And even if it's a virus, I have this supplement called Vivi. It's an antiviral herbal supplement. It's like thebomb.com for conquering these these low virus infections that are probably the most common infection that I see. But another great thing to do, whether you have an infection or not, and we can get into this deeper, is the vitamin D. Vitamin D is what I would take on, if I'm going to take anything all the time, I'm going to take vitamin D. And it's a crazy, great wellness component. And especially if you've got autoimmune disease in your genetics, your family history and you're worried about, your mom has Alzheimer's or your dad has Parkinson's. Like my family, Parkinson's runs in the family. And so it's a matter of, how do I keep myself healthy to avoid my immune system attacking my nervous system? And vitamin D is a fantastic supplement to take. I highly recommend it, but I don't recommend the normal dose because the normal dose is like 2,000 to 5,000 IUs per day. Yeah, you can take that. You're not going to feel any different when you take it though. Whereas if you can say, okay, I've got some anxiety and some depression going on, I'm going to jack up my vitamin D for 3 months and I'm going to kick those to the curb. That's as simple as it can be. And when I see these vitamin D labs, and when we're talking about low energy levels and anxiety and depression, the vitamin D normal lab is between 30 and 100. It's the same concept with the TSH and trying to find your ideal lab vitamin D number, like finding your favorite restaurant in California and New York with that lab range. Whereas I know with how many labs, thousands and thousands of labs that I've seen, it's only a handful of people that I've actually seen that have really good vitamin D statuses. And usually when I find the labs and their lab numbers,
what do you consider really good?
80. You want to be around 80 on 80? The lab test. Okay. So when I find somebody like 86 or 92 or 105, I always ask them, like, what have you been doing with your vitamin D? And they're like, oh, well, I've been following your protocol for the last 3 months that you tell us on Facebook. Perfect. See, it works. And I literally had people say, it's crazy that I just took these vitamin D levels and my anxiety is gone. My energy levels are back up. The depression, the seasonal depression, or even, heck, we've been locked up for a year now. Take this vitamin D and I guarantee you're going to feel better. And then people are always giving me crap for telling people these are toxic levels. And I've done a ton of research on this. So what I found is that there was one research in particular, because I work with so much autoimmune, that there was a doctor who was working with psoriasis, vitiligo, and MS. And his big thing was, I'm going to use this research. I think he had like over 50 patients with these 3 individual things. He wanted to see just the powers of vitamin D. That's it. I'm going to give these people with autoimmune diseases high doses of vitamin D for 3 months. I'm going to see what happens. So he gave them 35,000 IUs of vitamin D for 3 months straight.
A day?
5,000 IUs of vitamin D per day. Okay.
Wow.
Over 75% of the patients show no signs of autoimmune disease afterwards. It literally put their autoimmune disease into remission. So the flares that we experience with MS, they haven't had them in over a decade now. And the psoriasis that we see on the skin clears up. Like, that's how powerful vitamin D can be. And especially with autoimmune diseases, chronic fatigue, anxiety, depression, because what it does is it like calms down the immune cells called Treg cells, but you have to take it at such a high dose that it will literally calm the immune system down. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Wow.
So this is my vitamin D recommendation. It's not quite as high, but I just want people to know that don't be scared about getting toxic levels. And you can test if you'd like. Like I've said, over 95% of individuals, their vitamin D status is less than 50 on their labs. So if we can get that up, I promise you're going to feel better overall. The anxiety, depression, the chronic fatigue, it's going to become minimal. 3 months. That's all you need to do.
What level of vitamin D?
I'm about to tell you.
Okay. All right.
I thought I missed it.
No, I have to set this up because people freak out about my number. I'm like, I promise, guys, it's okay. I've literally had strangers email me over this. And so here you go. 25,000 IUs of vitamin D per day for a month. That's it. Just 1 month, 25,000. And if people look at their vitamin D, whatever they have on their shelf right now, it's usually the serving size is usually 2,000 or 5,000 per day, 2,000 to 5,000 per day. That's usually the serving size. But your labs will not change at that dosage. And if your labs aren't going to change, you're not going to feel any different either. Okay, so the first month, do 25,000 IUs of vitamin D. The second month, do 20,000 IUs of vitamin D. The third month, do 15,000. And then if you want to maintain at 10,000. And I will tell you, the only thing I give my kids and myself is vitamin D. I'm not one to take supplements, but I will take vitamin D because I know how powerful it is. And even if you live in Florida, I don't care. Like I've seen everybody's lab, not everybody's, but I've seen a ton of people's labs in Florida and the Caribbean and like those sunshine areas where it's like, well, I'm out in the sun all day long. Why is my vitamin D still at 39? Well, one, our bodies can't synthesize it as well as they used to. And two, the sun has to go through a bunch of crap to get to your body. So just taking a simple supplement with vitamin D in it, and then you want to take that with food because it's fat soluble. So that way you can absorb it better.
Any particular kind of food? Fatty?
Fats. Yeah.
Fats.
I just eat it with a meal because it's going to contain, your meal is going to contain the carbs, proteins, and fats. So if you just eat it with a meal, then.
Okay.
Yeah, you do that vitamin D dosage, ladies. It's going to rock your socks.
Wow, that is high. I can see why people are emailing you.
Yeah, but it's for a short time. Now, if you were to say, I'm going to take 25,000 IUs for 5 years, now we got to check the levels for sure. Like that's way too long. But only a 3-month period. I always just say people jack it up, especially if you're got autoimmune in the family, or if you're thinking, sometimes I have great days and sometimes I have bad days and nobody knows why. That can be an autoimmune component. Or if you're fighting that infection, boost the immune system up and use that vitamin D to do it.
Wow. Okay. 25,000, then 20,000, then 15, and maintain at 10,000.
Yeah.
All right.
Now for kids, because people always ask about their grandkids or their kids, for kids, I would do 15, 10, and 5.
Okay. And then maintain at
5.
So I don't know why, but I thought chronic fatigue somehow would lead right into sleep because to me, I'm not getting enough sleep.
I'll get your coverage here. Okay. So chronic fatigue, we've got the infection.
Yes.
I just taught you about the vitamin D.
Yes.
A third component of chronic fatigue is our cortisol.
Okay.
Is our sleep, right?
Yeah.
So our cortisol is that hormone that's produced by our adrenal glands. Our adrenal glands sit right on top of our kidneys in our lower back, and they are responsible for producing cortisol when we're stressed. Now, I always like to say this because as a mom, and I know like my mother, my parents have in a couple months here, they'll have 5 kids living with them under the age of 5. So it's going to be hectic at their household.
Yeah, I'd call that stressful.
Yeah. If I were to say, hey, mom, dad, like you're not going to feel better if you figure out a way to make your life more stressful. They're going to laugh at me and say like, you're funny. Kick your brothers out of my house then. And so for me, it's like, yes, we can tackle the external stressors and help lower our cortisol levels. But if we were to find something on the inside of our body causing stress and remove it, now we can handle the outside stressors much better. And 90% of the time, that internal stressor is the infection, which is causing the inflammation, which is making your knees hurt. All coming back to stress and the infection. Now, when you're talking, say fibromyalgia, right? Fibromyalgia, a lot of people have the diagnosis. The main concerns are pain, insomnia, and fatigue. Those are the 3 primary top dogs with fibro. And, you're given Lyrica and told, I hope this helps. But then you go to bed at night, and I've heard this from many, many individuals, and even myself, where we lay down in bed and our mind is going a million miles an hour, but our bodies are physically exhausted. Mm-hmm. That's where cortisol is taking over. Our cortisol is too high, so that's controlling our brain. Whereas what should be controlling our brain is this thing called GABA. And GABA is one of those happy, calming neurotransmitters. So a lot of your supplements that are called calm or anti-anxiety supplements, they have GABA in them. So one of the easiest ways to get better sleep at night is to lower the cortisol levels with an adrenal supplement. A lot of people will take ashwagandha to lower their cortisol levels.
How do you spell that?
Ashwa, so ASHWAGANDA, ashwagandha.
Okay.
It's a popular herb. Or you can take like an adrenal adaptogen. You can find these online anywhere. The supplement that I use and I recommend is GA. It's an adrenal adaptogen. You can find it on my website at drkylieburton.com if you're interested. And I'll tell you my magic 3 for sleeping too. Cures insomnia over 90% of the time. The GA or the adrenal adaptogen will lower the cortisol at night naturally. And then when you give your body GABA, in some way, in some form. For me, the supplement's called Calm, along with a million other different supplements called Calm, that has GABA in it. So you take the GA and the GABA, the adrenals and the GABA at night. That's going to lower the cortisol levels, provide the brain with GABA that should be taking over your brain so you can fall asleep and stay asleep. And then the third component is anytime you're working with cortisol levels and trying to help heal your adrenal glands, you have to balance the blood sugar at the same time. Blood sugar is key, especially in hot flashes and menopause. So blood sugar, the way I help people handle is a supplement called Sinulin. I always tell people it's the natural version of metformin without all the side effects. And it's pretty dang good. So if you wanted to get my magic 3, it's GA, Calm, and Sinulin. Take 2 each at night. And in a month, you'll be sleeping way better. Unless you have kids like me that will wake you up.
I thought you were going to say sleeping like a baby, but that's not what.
Sometimes babies don't sleep very well.
Right.
So.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Sinulin, you said helps balance your blood sugar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a natural, like I said, it's a natural version of metformin.
Okay.
And metformin is your blood sugar stabilized from the pharmaceutical world. Yeah, so if you're thinking 3 underlying causes of chronic fatigue, we got the low-grade infection, we got the low vitamin D status, and then we've got the adrenal fatigue, which is the cortisol component, which affects the sleep. And when you wake up, you're still feeling tired because you were up from 3 to 4 because you couldn't sleep. And
right.
Yeah, so if you lower the cortisol, provide your brain with GABA, then that will help conquer the insomnia.
Okay, and you said that the supplements that you use are on your website?
Yeah. So drkylieburton.com. And then you just order them. We'll ship them directly to your house, wherever you are, even across the world.
Okay.
We'll link to those in the show notes so that it's easy to find.
They're my top favorite 3, particularly for sleep and insomnia, but fibromyalgia, cool stuff.
The vitamin D, if you decide you're going to take the large doses that you recommend, do you just go to your local drugstore and buy a bunch of vitamin D capsules?
Well, a lot of people will have vitamin D on their shelf already. So what I always recommend is go look at what you have. And then a lot of people are like, whoa, 25,000, that means I have to take 12 capsules. That's a lot. I'm not a fan of taking 12 things at once. So you can finish out what you have. And then the vitamin D that I recommend, I'm not just going to say this to say this, but it's probably far one of the best on the market. What you're getting at the supplement stores, whether it's GNC, Costco, Amazon, whatever it is, they're going to be filled with a whole bunch of fillers. Now, you have to be careful too with vitamin D because vitamin D will also usually be combined with vitamin K in the supplements. And if you're on blood thinners, thinner medication, you can't take vitamin K. So things like warfarin and vitamin K don't mix. So make sure if you're on warfarin, take a vitamin D without K because most of them will contain K. And if you're wanting some of the stuff I use, it's a DV3. It's 4 capsules per day, gets you the right dosage. And then I have the liquid as well. So if you want capsules or liquid, the liquid tastes like orange soda. And I can't keep this stuff on my shelf. So order fast and we'll get you some. But it's one of my favorite things to do. And no matter what people are feeling like, especially if their vitamin D is in the tank. And when I say in the tank, if it's less than 50, because it's such an easy thing to take and you just feel better generally when that's up. I mean, we all feel better in the summertime going out in the sunshine anyways. It's that same kind of concept, only you're getting a very good quality vitamin combination. And if you're a lab people, like grab your labs, check out your vitamin D, do the protocol for 3 months, and then have your doctor order you some more vitamin D level lab and see what happened, see what changed. I think you'll be shocked.
And you want it to be around 80.
Yeah, that's the ideal range. So even like if you're below 50 on the lab panel, on the vitamin D lab panel, definitely do the 25,000, 20,000, 15,000. If you're floating between 50 and 80, you could easily do the same thing. I mean, you won't be harmed. Well, I'll just say that. There's no harm to it unless you're taking it for, 3, 4, 5 years at a time at 25,000.
We hear a lot about our having healthy gut these days, and how does that tie into all of this? And what advice can you give us on having a healthy, well-functioning gut?
Yeah, people always, we talk about this gut stuff all the time. Like the gut is the second brain. And the more we learn about the gut, the more we're amazed at how much control over our body that it does have. If you're like me and you scroll through Facebook and you're seeing the sponsored ads and you're seeing somebody offers a magic supplement pill for all digestive issues, somebody else offers the one test that you need for all your gut stuff, another person saying that they have the magic probiotic for your gut, and ultimately every single person's gut, it's like our fingerprint. It's unique to you. There are millions and trillions and billions of bacteria, and we all have different strains and we all have different varieties. So treating our gut like a one-size-fits-all is first a very wrong approach. And two, a lot of times what I find with people in their gut is they're taking a probiotic and then taking the same probiotic for, 3, 5, 7 years at this point. I always want to caution you about taking the same probiotic because our gut needs variety. It needs a variety of food, it needs a variety of vegetables, it needs a variety of bacteria, including a variety of probiotics. And then if you're taking a probiotic, what I recommend is just rotating different probiotics in your system every 3 months. So because that's good variety. And then in addition, you got to feed those guys with some prebiotics. Prebiotics feed the probiotics. So combine the two. And if we're wanting to start there, you can. If you feel like you take a probiotic and digestive symptoms worsen, which is common, then we're going to look up this term called Sibo, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, the most common underlying cause of IBS, Crohn's, and ulcerative colitis. So now that we're on the gut topic, the normal bowel movements, nobody talks about these either. So I even had there's a funny story I like to share. I had a 14-year-old boy come in one time back when I had a brick and mortar practice. Right now it's functional, so we're virtual, and we've been this way for the last 2 years. But he came in and he was like, you know what? I have diarrhea 5, 6, 7, 8 times a day, to the point where he's homeschooled and he really, really wants to go to scout camp with his friends in that summer. But he was terrified because he always has to be near the bathroom. So I start working with him and he had, all of these online tests between the hair samples and the gut microbiome, the bacterial component of it, and all of these additional lab tests that his mom had ordered online, searching and searching and searching for answers. When if you're dealing with chronic constipation or chronic diarrhea or both, then we're dealing with a thing called Sibo, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. It's also CFO with an F, and that's a small intestinal fungal overgrowth. The two of them usually go hand in hand. If your bowel movements are not daily, and you'd like them to be, we're going to tackle the Sibo, and they will be. So I tackled his Sibo in like the first month he came back, and he was like, now I'm constipated. So what do you mean you're constipated? How many bowel movements are you having per day? And he said, 1. And I smiled, and I was like, that's normal, bud. But because you've been dealing with 5, 6, 7 a day for so many years now, you now feel constipated, but you're really normal. So bowel movements 1 time a day, ladies. That's the goal. You don't need to take magnesium. You can take magnesium if you'd like, but it's typically not a lack of magnesium. It's typically we got some destruction to do. We have too many bad bacteria and not enough good. And those bad bacteria, there's 2 different types of them. They produce 2 different types of gases, depending on the type of bacteria it is. So the one type of gas that produces hydrogen gas, I don't want to flip these around. The one that produces hydrogen gas is going to lead to constipation. And the one that produces methane gas is going to lead to diarrhea. I might have flip-flopped them, but I'm not sure. Anyways, the types of gases that they produce either 1, constipation, or 2, diarrhea. And so if we can kill off that bad guy and then replenish, and that's the big issue that I see with people's guts. Like I was talking to, she's hitting menopause and she's gaining weight like crazy. I was talking to her yesterday, and she's been on some pretty high-powered antibiotic and antifungal, over the last 5 or 6 years. And that's great. Like, we do a great job destroying things, but then we never rebuild it. And if we do rebuild it, we're just taking the same probiotic for a year or more at the same time. When in reality, yes, it is a bacterial component and a fungal component, but there's so much more to it with Sibo and CFO. So if we're looking at getting really detailed into gut stuff, just believe me, there's no one size fits all. And then tackle the bad bacteria and the bad fungal components if your bowel movements are not normal. That normal is 1 time a day. And it's really common with women and candida.
We should make sure, let's talk about menopause.
Yeah.
Okay. Hot flashes, low libido, weight gain, vaginal dryness. Anything else, ladies?
Brain fog.
Brain fog. Yeah, that's a good one. Okay. When we come into menopause, people always think, well, my estrogen's getting lower, which means I should probably take estrogen. And you can do the bioidentical route if you'd like to. I'm not a fan, but it's there. It's available if you'd like to. And when you take, if you're dealing with hot flashes and you take estrogen, chances are they'll go away pretty quickly. I don't know if they'll stay away, but they'll at least lessen. And the best thing you can do heading into menopause, during menopause, and even post-menopause is focus on blood sugar.
Oh.
Yeah. Blood sugar is the underlying factor of hormone chaos. So if you're thinking, I'm craving sugar, it's a blood sugar issue. I get lightheaded or dizzy sometimes and just randomly, it's a blood sugar issue.
Wow.
Where our blood sugar is dipping just low enough during the day that our body's starting to go, whoa, cool.
Yeah.
And preventing hot flashes, blood sugar.
Wow.
I know. Whenever I teach, because I teach doctors every single week, but whenever I teach hormones, I always teach blood sugar. You can't fix hormones without balancing the blood sugar. Okay, let's talk food and blood sugar. I have 3 rules for balancing blood sugar when it comes to our food. And I'm a culprit of this too. In fact, like the last couple of weeks, I know my blood sugar is off because I'm getting car sick just sitting in the car normally. And 2, I'm just like, okay, my head's getting a little bit fuzzy and I need to be grounded, and I'm grabbing onto things to make sure I'm grounded. For me, that's a big sign of my blood sugar is dipping. Probably if I were to see a lab, it would probably be around 80, which is within my normal range, but I want to see it above, like in the high 80s, low 90s. That's where I want to sit. And I want to sit there all day long. These little dips and these little curves, that's where we get into issues. That's where we get into the menopause chaos that we just assume is normal with menopause. And that's where we get into the brain fog, the fatigue, the hormone issues in general, right? So the 3 rules in regards to food is 1, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. We used to hear this a lot, and now it's like intermittent fasting and keto, and I'm a big fan of breakfast because breakfast sets up your day. No, there's a restaurant out here, Neaters. Do you guys have Neaters by you?
No.
So Neaters is like a bakery, and they have the best French toast ever. They have like this really thick 1-inch French toast with cinnamon butter, and it's just delicious. Actually, I think it's cinnamon caramel, to be honest. So let's add even more sugar to the French toast, right? But it's so good. So when you go eat at restaurants like these for breakfast, my thing is, okay, I'm going to get my French toast because it's so good, but I'm going to get an omelet to go with it. So I can balance out the sugar with the protein and the fat that's in the omelet. And that's really how you got to approach breakfast. The more fats and the more proteins you can get for breakfast, the better. So in my house, we're big fans of eggs. I cook eggs about every single day. And then if I got time, which is most days, bacon and sausage. I love my mornings, so I don't start work till 10. And a lot of people, that's not possible. So a lot of them, I've even recommended, cook enough food to have like breakfast burritos every morning for the week on Sunday. So you can literally meal prep your breakfast as well, and then you can grab it and go as you're walking out the door to work. So breakfast is key. More fats, more proteins, the better. The second rule is I'm not a fan of fasting. I'm a fan of eating every single meal. And that's the second rule. Don't skip a meal. Because if we're dealing with blood sugar issues, what I find most helpful, especially with hormone chaos and really sick individuals, like the ones I primarily work with. But what I find is if we can make sure our body knows that food is coming and when it's coming, we're going to be able to stay more at this level plateau with our blood sugar rather than dipping up and down. And when we're, eating breakfast at 8:30, sometimes we eat lunch at 12, sometimes it's 2:30, sometimes I don't get lunch, sometimes I'm grabbing lunch. My mom's in the education world, and she's like, gets home at 4:30 and she hasn't eaten all day. I'm like, Mom, you got to eat, right?
Yeah.
And then I find myself culprit too. So for me, I've got my snacks sitting right here on my desk, so I know that I can eat food. My body knows that food's coming. So one, it's not going to store it, preventing me to lose weight and gaining weight. But two, it's going to set up my blood sugar. Okay. So number one, eat a good breakfast. Number two, never skip a meal. Number three is whenever you do eat carbs, add a protein and a fat with it. Looks like this. So if you want to grab an apple, have peanut butter with it, or almonds, or cashews, or that's as simple as it can be. Just don't eat carbs by itself. So that will spike the blood sugar and then it will drop back down again.
Okay. So no fasting. That's very popular right now. What about evening? So eat your meals. Do you eat snacks or evening foods or?
I just had a podcast episode with a nutritionist, and her concept of, and what I've seen as well, is that we want to eat for more energy to avoid eating the pantry at night. And here's what we mean. What I mean by that is don't go all day and not eat anything. You got to fuel your body during the day. So then when you get nighttime, you're not starving and you don't want to eat everything that you see in sight. Eat during the day, fuel your body during the day, have a good, healthy, solid dinner again, and then you're probably set up ready to go for a night. Now, I'm not going to say, don't eat after 8 or don't eat after 7 or whatever it is. And if you are intermittent fasting and if it's working for you, awesome. I'm not telling you to stop. But what I see with intermittent fasters is that they're not eating enough. They're eating maybe 12, 14, 1,500 calories per day and then wondering why they have no energy. Your body's going to burn 1,500 calories a day if you were to sit on your butt and do nothing all day long. It's burning everything that you're eating. So then you're tired. Well, give yourself another 1,000 calories and you might have a little bit more energy because your body's like, whoa, I got some more to burn. I can keep going now, rather than I've burned it all and I'm going to start eating my bones and get osteoporosis.
We don't want that.
Yeah, all of a sudden that got really serious.
Well, speaking of osteoporosis,
yeah,
menopause is a fantastic way to either prevent it or get a hold on it. Vitamin D is crucial for preventing osteoporosis. And in the labs, the vitamin D and the calcium go hand in hand. So if I see somebody with low calcium, I automatically think vitamin D. Osteoporosis, get the vitamin D in you because it's going to protect the calcium inside your bones. There's another reason to take vitamin D.
Wow. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about supplements. I know that you talked some about them, of course, vitamin D, but are there other supplements that you recommend as well? How do you determine which ones those might be?
I always want to go for quality, and I'm not one to say, let's take this for the rest of your life. I will say that with vitamin D because it's that crucial and that important for multiple reasons. But what I use supplements for, and that's how I treat people, but I use them to get the job done, and then be done with them. And there is a very big difference on the quality standard. I would personally never order a supplement off Amazon. Amazon has been it's not Amazon's fault, but there have been times where I've seen, and people show me this, that they've ordered things on Amazon. It's the two of the same product. When they open up the product, what's inside is different. So like the powders in the capsules are different. So you really don't know what you're getting, to be honest. You can get it from, a good quoted source with great reviews, but ultimately we don't quite know. And then my other worry with supplements is is I was scrolling through my Facebook feed the other day. It's the only platform I'm really on. And there was literally a Facebook ad that said, we can teach you how to create your own supplement line so you can sell them. Like, really? You're going to just teach anybody how to create a supplement line and sell it? It's a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Supplements aren't regulated by the Food and Drug Administration.
Correct.
And that's where it gets kind of scary. So how do you know that it's a quality supplement? Is it price? I don't know. How do you know for sure?
Who you're getting it
brand
from.
Name, certain brand names?
I will tell you that there are supplements, like the ones I recommend, that you cannot get without a doctor's license.
Okay.
Those are the brands I would stick with. I don't even want to start saying brands because I know a handful of these brands that used to be doctor owned type things just got bought out by Hershey's. So the same brand that us doctors were using for our patients, now Hershey's owns them and it's not the same, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the brand I use, they're literally, 10 miles down the road. They have one of the best labs in the entire country. And that's one of the reasons why I use them. One, because the purity is so pure, the process that it has to go through to get into even the capsule. And then two, the combinations that they put inside each one. Now I can say, okay, we need 4 things, take 2 capsules twice a day, get the job done and be done, rather than saying, you're going to need 25 herbs, take each one of these 25 pills 4 times a day. You're taking 100 pills a day. And I can't tell you how many times this happens to people. By the time they get to me, they're shocked. Like, really? This is it? This is all I need? Yeah, there's a reason why I use what I use. And that company is called Systemic Formulas. That's how I actually teach the doctors every week, is I teach 1,000 doctors on their platform how to read labs and how to do this kind of stuff. The companies that you have to have a doctor's license to get to, I would go through them. Even if it's personally, I don't think they cost anymore because people are still making money, a lot of money on supplements, selling them on Amazon, the same thing.
Right.
I live in Utah, which is MLM country. Every MLM is in Utah, I swear. And every mom has some type of MLM they're affiliated with. And it's a great way for them to add a little bit of income to the family. But I always hesitate too with MLMs in generally.
Yeah. No, I get that for sure. Thank you.
What about food? I mean, we just talked about how to eat, but how do you advise your patients on what they actually eat? Is there anything you tell them not to eat?
I'm going to shock you here because by the time most people get to me, they've eliminated everything under the sun. And they're eating like 5, 6, 7 things a day, every day for days on end. And they've done that because they become so desperate to try to find some avenue that will help them, that they've eliminated all of these, quote, food culprits that they're trained to, that so many functional medicine doctors under their preach. If you Google, you can Google anything nowadays. And a lot of times we'll remove gluten, remove soy, remove dairy, remove peanut butter, remove eggs, what do you eat?
Right.
If you're removing all of this stuff. I've had people with food sensitivity tests, and one of them had an immaculate garden. She wouldn't eat anything in her garden because her food sensitivity test came back and said it was positive for carrots and positive for broccoli, and it just blows my mind. So my thing is, your gut needs variety. You need variety. Food should be enjoyed. So changing our relationship with it, whatever that means to you, that's where I would start with food. Because we always think, I need to eat less. I need to eat less. I need to eat less. And I'm looking at people and their physical trainer has them on a 1,400 calorie diet and they're working out for 2 hours in the gym. Well, no one wonders why you're not losing weight. Your body is going to start eating itself in the form of osteoporosis or stress fractures in college, high school athletes. And then you're wondering why, your hormones have tanked and they're gone in the toilet. Like, we have this idea that 2,000 calories is the limit. And then we look around and we see all this obesity around us. So now we're like, oh, I can't even eat 2,000 calories because that's what they're eating and they're obese. And so I'm going to, eat 1,500 calories. When in reality, what if you were to eat 3,000, 3,000 calories. And now your body's like, oh, I got food. I'm going to rev up my engine. I'm going to rev up that metabolism. And now I lose weight because I'm feeding my body. I'm staying warm because I have food to burn. And people always ask me, what should I eat? I want you to eat food. I want it to be healthy, but eat it. And I want you to enjoy eating food. Like, when was the last time we sat down at a meal and literally said, oh man, this tastes so good? Like, we've had so many negative thoughts and negative food has become negative in general. To me, food is part of life and it should be enjoyed. So do you need to cut out gluten, or do you need to cut out dairy? You might. I don't do dairy because my body doesn't appreciate it. Doesn't like it. I have asthma. My acne comes back. Dairy is just not a friend in my body, so I don't eat it. But other things like, I'm not going to prevent myself from eating a cake on my son's birthday or having fudge on Christmas at a Christmas party. But what I've found is that people are eating these things and then, they're sick for days on end, or they've cut them out. Like, someone the other day was telling me that her husband's been sugar-free for 3 years. They haven't had sugar in their house for 3 years, and he's still non-functioning. But it's literally like he's a lawyer and he can't even work because his health is so bad and nobody can figure out why. But this is the whole problem of, we've taken out all of these foods and we've eliminated all of these foods that we're not even living anymore. We're not eating. We're not feeding our guts with bacteria, variety of bacteria. So eat up, ladies.
I remember several years ago doing something and we weren't eating fruit. And so in Ohio, I've told this to Chris before, but in Ohio, the one crop we have is in the fall, we have wonderful apples.
Oh, yeah.
And that year I didn't eat any apples because I wasn't supposed to eat fruit.
Oh, man.
The next year I thought, you know what? This is the stupidest thing in the world. I missed out on all of those wonderful apples. So I was like, if it says you can't eat apples, it's like saying you can't eat carrots. If you can't eat apples, there's something wrong with it. So yeah. I eat apples.
Yeah,
now.
I've got another patient
with peanut butter.
Yes. She's been keto for like 3 years now, and she won't even eat watermelon, and it's her favorite during the summertime.
Oh.
Like, watermelon's like pure water. That's why it's called a watermelon. But we've just taken it to the extreme, and I'm not a fan.
So we talked a little bit about foods, and I was wondering about superfoods. I was listening to a podcast the other day about avoiding dementia. They were talking about leafy greens and avocados and different foods that really help to protect you. And I wondered your thoughts on that. Are there certain spices that you would recommend, or any recipes like green smoothies? I don't know.
I'm a fan of healthy fats, especially during menopause.
Okay.
In any type of hormone chaos whatsoever. The more healthy fats we can get in our body, the better. Because those healthy fats are producing our hormones. Progesterone, testosterone, estrogen, cortisol, they all come from healthy fats. And the more the merrier. Avocados, olive oil, coconut oil, even if you're putting butter on meals, like my husband, to get more calories in, he just puts butter on all of his meals, especially when he was like weightlifting heavy. Don't be afraid of fats. Just make them healthy, because that's going to help your hormones, no matter how hormonal chaotic your hormones are. That would, to me, would be my superfood, would be healthy fats.
Good advice. Thank you.
So we did mention your website, but why don't you tell us again, if our listeners wanted to get more information from you or just find you online, where would they go?
The best place to learn more is to listen to my podcast, Beyond the Diagnosis with me, Dr. Kylie. And I'm also on Facebook. That's where I'm most active, at Dr. Kylie Burton. And then my website is also drkylieburton.com. But the best place to just learn more is the podcast, Beyond the Diagnosis.
Okay, Beyond the Diagnosis.
Yep.
You did say most of your patients now, you do now see people virtually?
Yeah, I don't have any boundary restrictions. I've been doing it for 2 years and I love it. I was doing Zoom before Zoom was cool. Yeah, so if they want to reach out, they just go onto my website, drkylieburton.com, and schedule a free consult.
Okay, great.
And that's where then I'll just give you a call and see what you're dealing with, if I can help you overcome it, and if so, what would be the plan moving forward.
Okay, great.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been so interesting. I have pages of notes here, and I really appreciate your
You're welcome,
talking
ladies.
with us.
Oh, yeah, this was great. Thank you so much.
Well, holler if you want another one.
Okay, well, we may well.
Okay, take care.
Bye.
See ya. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Wow. Dr. Kylie gave us lots of great information today. I'm going to have to listen to this episode a few times to get everything down. I'm going to go check my blood work results because I know I have that white blood cell count test that she was talking about. I want to see what my number is.
Right. And I'm going to check my D3 because I know that I often have low D3. And it's something that I've often struggled with simply because I always blame it on being in Northeast Ohio where we have a lot of cloud cover. But obviously D3 is important. And but I was really surprised with the amount of D3 that she suggested that we take. It's unusual, to hear that.
Yeah, it is. So I liked her advice on supplements, which was to basically not take. I've had some doctors, particularly functional medicine doctors, that have just loaded me up with supplements. And her thought on getting as much as you can through your food was good advice, I thought.
Right. We don't often think about food is medicine in many ways.
So I'm going to remind everyone that we are not doctors and you should not take medical advice from us.
Right. And I want to remind everyone that Dr. Kylie is not necessarily your doctor. And it's best to take the advice of your own doctor who has your labs.
Well, and if you want to consult with Dr. Kylie, she is taking new patients and she gave us contact information. I'm not telling people what to do, but if you want to consult with Dr. Kylie, go to our website and make an appointment. That would be my advice.
Yeah. In these days of virtual appointments, and, to me, she seems like she's on the cutting edge of a lot of different things, and she sure impressed me. But I'd like to hear what our listeners think. Let us know what health changes you are making, and you can even leave us a voicemail at 330-970-6662. That's 330-970-6662. And don't forget, if you're looking for an online community, be sure to follow us on our Facebook page and join our private Facebook group where we encourage and support each other. We're also on Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest, as well as YouTube. I'm looking forward to talking to you again on the next episode of the Fit Strong Women Over 50 podcast. See you next time. Bye. Bye-bye.